Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Gamecock Central Radio. Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell for a recruiting update today. Wes, good to have you today. Busy weekend coming up for Gamecock football.
Yeah, exciting time. Dead period is over. It's really just a 3-weekend push towards National Signing Day 2017. So, the dead period ended where coaches could get back out and see kids, and kids could start visiting on Thursday, and then on Friday, as we record this, South Carolina will be expecting a number of official visitors to be on campus for the weekend. Most of them, if not all of them, arriving on Friday and leaving on Sunday. So, really, like I said, it's a 3-weekend push towards that big Wednesday in February.
Wes, we've got 11 kids scheduled to visit South Carolina this weekend. I wanted to get you to talk about them a little bit. And before we started today's podcast, you mentioned that Hamza Nasruldeen from Concord, North Carolina, is a Gamecock commit, but his recruitment may still be open in some ways. Talk about him a little bit and tell us about this group that's coming in this weekend.
Committed guys right now that are going to be on campus are Hamza Nasruldeen, Concord. You got Jay Urich, who, of course, is the Wren quarterback that's been committed for a while. Will Register, the tight end from nearby Chapin. Sherrod Green, who is from Rocky Mount, North Carolina, a linebacker that's a really, really good player. Tavin Jackson from Tallahassee, Florida, Rickards, and Eric Douglas from Allard Creek up in Charlotte, that powerhouse. But, Hamza is sort of the guy among the committed that you would talk about as being, where you treat this weekend almost as if he's not committed. And not that there's a huge difference between the two as far as how you would treat the weekend, but, for the committed guys, these weekends are much more about having a good time, letting the parents, parents are a lot of times on these visits, so you want to let the parents meet the other parents because these are folks that they're going to share relationships with for the next 4 or 5 years, and then many times on into the future. So a big part of South Carolina's visits is that, they want for these parents to go ahead and get to know each other and get to know the staff. You want the players to meet the academic advisors and, all that stuff, and sort of start to see what campus life will be like at South Carolina. So for the committed guys, it's really more of a precursor for them to arrive. For the uncommitted guys, it's much more, and of course with Hamza, who's committed but is still looking at Florida State, is much more about sort of getting down to the details of, hey, what questions do you have? What can be answered? What can we show you to comfort any fears you may have? And, of course, if you're a defensive back like Hamza Nasruldeen is, and you're South Carolina, you're Will Muschamp or Travaris Robinson, you actually have a very, very good sort of history to sell at that position.
Recruiting update with Wes Mitchell here on Gamecock Central Radio. I'm Emerson Phillips. We invite you to download the Gamecock Central Radio app. We've got this free phone app that allows you to listen to our podcast anywhere you receive cell phone service. You can listen on your phone. The app is available on the App Store and on Google Play. To subscribe to Gamecock Central Podcast, search for Gamecock Central Radio on iTunes, SoundCloud, and other popular services, or visit radio.GamecockCentral.com. Wes, 3 weekends remaining until National Signing Day on Wednesday, February the 1st. So all 3 weekends are packed with visitors, 11 of them coming in this weekend to take a look at the Gamecock football program, an up-close look. And one of the other players that I wanted to get you to talk about, Wes, is Devontae Wyatt, the defensive tackle from Decatur, Georgia. He's a Georgia Bulldog commit.
Yeah, committed to Georgia. He was at one time committed to South Carolina before flipping to Georgia. And, this is a kid that South Carolina offered before Georgia did, had him on camp, had him in for camp and loved him. And Lance Thompson has really just worked this thing all the way from the end. South Carolina didn't let it deter them when he decommitted. There's a lot of Georgia pressure, as always, for him to stay in state, play for the Bulldogs. But, South Carolina has sort of just done everything they can to hang in there, and now they'll get their chance to try to flip him back. Now, the thing to watch here is that he actually has his Georgia official next weekend. So, I think this is a kid that's been very much closer to sort of 50-50 versus being a guy that, was firmly committed to Georgia. So, Carolina is very much in it. They'll do their best, put their best foot forward. But then, I think in the end, one thing is sort of the timing of the visits. It'll be interesting to watch. What does he say after this weekend's visit? But then what does he say after the Georgia visit next week? And then even actually could visit Florida on January the 27th as well. So, I think with Wyatt, it's a kid that there's a long-standing relationship with, so it's not one of these things where this is just some random guy they're trying to flip, but at the same time, home state pressure is always tough on a kid. So he's one of those recruitments right now that truly will come down to, I think, maybe even the hours leading into him signing on National Signing Day.
Wes, offensive line, an area of need for the Gamecocks going into this 2017 signing day, and wanted to get you to talk about Eric Douglas from Mallard Creek out of Charlotte. Mallard Creek has emerged as the top high school football program in Charlotte. That's a football hotbed, and Mallard Creek is producing some top-notch Division I players. Talk about Eric Douglas.
Yeah, Douglas is a kid that's as firmly committed as you could possibly be. He spoke to new offensive line coach Eric Wolford earlier this week. That conversation went well from everything I've been told. And this will be his opportunity to really just sit down with Wolford, let his family meet Wolford and see what they're all about. But early conversation went very, very well. They sort of had to get to know each other, talk on the phone, and Douglas is a kid that looked good at the Shrine Bowl. Will have to put on a little bit of weight, but he's got some athleticism to him. Great kid, good recruiter for South Carolina too. I think he's someone that they'll be happy that he's on campus this weekend to sort of work some of these uncommitted guys.
Wes, we're 3 weeks away from signing day, and we're late in the recruiting process. How important are these visits in the month of January?
They're huge, and I think to sort of talk about a couple of other guys, Pendleton's Brad Johnson, South Carolina needs pass rushers. This is a kid that is outstanding at getting to the quarterback. He's already officially visited Virginia Tech. He'll be at South Carolina this weekend, obviously. Right now has a scheduled visit to Tennessee next weekend. So that's sort of the three schools he's focused on. But, if you look at South Carolina's needs and somebody that can get into the backfield and disrupt things, it's an important piece of the puzzle if you ask me. So, he's on campus. Obviously, Jordan Rhodes, who's a Creekside High School offensive tackle. That's in Fairburn, Georgia. This is a kid that has only played a couple of years of organized football, has more of a basketball background, but has athleticism that is just through the roof. And when I look at South Carolina's offensive line, to me, that's something that they're going to have to continue to upgrade. So Jordan Rhodes, he's only ranked a 2-star guy by Rivals.com, but to me, he's kind of a no-brainer for South Carolina because offensive line is such a developmental position. You don't see many kids that are like 6'6", 300 pounds, and are as light on their feet as Jordan Rhodes is. So I think he's a guy to sort of watch there as far as this class goes. A couple of other guys, Grayson, offensive lineman Tony Gray will be in. Personally, I don't get the sense he'll end up in South Carolina's class, but he is officially visiting, so you never know there. And then Jalen Twyman, who is a defensive tackle out of Washington, D.C., I think with a lot of these guys, you look at when there's a position where they're recruiting a bunch of guys at the same position down the stretch, we know there's not going to be room for them to take all of them. But I think something this staff does a good job of is casting a wide enough net to where they're certainly going to be able to fill their needs, even if they miss on one guy. If you're kind of recruiting a few guys for one spot, then you're going to guarantee that you're going to have a good shot at meeting those needs.
The Gamecocks have 22 commitments right now. They can take up to 25. You talked about Brad Johnson, the defensive end from Pendleton High School here in South Carolina. We've been talking about him extensively on Gamecock Central Radio throughout this past football season and leading up to signing day. Johnson's been on the radar for some time, and Gamecock commits Will Register, the tight end from Chapin, and Jay Urich, the quarterback from Wren, the other two in-state prospects that will be taking their official on-campus visits at the University of South Carolina this weekend. So, Wes, taking a look ahead a little bit, 2 more busy recruiting weekends coming up after this weekend. How many more players the Gamecocks expected to bring in? And talk about the process. Are coaches still scheduling visits for the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, right now they sort of, I would say they have a really good idea of the guys that they're targeting now. We were tracking these visits well into Thursday, trying to figure out, there's a lot of maneuvering as far as, who's going to come in this weekend, who's going to come in that weekend. And generally, with your committed guys, you can sort of go ahead and bring them in this week, or if a guy, you sort of have to make that decision. Now, sometimes, it's not your say. When I'm talking about the coaching staff. It's up to the kid when he visits. But if the coaching staff has their way, the guys that are sort of teetering on making a commitment that you feel like either already committed or that you can lock up, you sort of go early with them. The guys that are going to come down to National Signing Day, you want the last visit because, you're talking about the guy leaving your campus on Sunday and then signing on that Wednesday. So, I think the final impression is always a positive thing. So there's a lot of maneuvering and there's a lot of, numbers monitoring as well. And, South Carolina currently set to bring in a couple of guys next week, Jordan Tucker, who's another offensive tackle prospect, and Robert Bill, who's a 4-star defensive end committed to Georgia. And then that final weekend actually should be a really big one for South Carolina as well. Aaron Sterling is a big-time defensive end prospect that was one time committed to Alabama. He's a 4-star guy. Javon Kinlaw, who everyone's familiar with, JUCO defensive tackle. He's coming in the last weekend. Dave Brown, the committed safety. And then Jamias Williams, who arguably is, South Carolina, at least one of South Carolina's best prospects they have committed. Similar situation to Hamza Nasruddin. Georgia is still pushing for him. So, I think it's a situation where South Carolina is very, very happy they'll have the last weekend there with Jamias. Will push to get him to completely lock it down going into National Signing Day. So it should really be an exciting weekend. Of course, there's always what we've talked about, the JUCO defensive back on the board a little bit, Mike Hughes, who's still out there. So still a possibility of some other names. Jordan Carty is an offensive tackle prospect. We're still tracking that, I think South Carolina is very much involved with, but lots of names out there, but I don't know if there's necessarily going to be a surprise pop up. I think it's more about South Carolina doing the best they can to maneuver, get in a good position with the right guys, and then ultimately it's a numbers game. You got to try to make the numbers work to where you most efficiently fill those final spots with guys that can help the program.
Wes, what would these kids be doing while they're on campus at South Carolina? Obviously, they're going to tour facilities, both athletic and academic. Is it 50-50, academics and athletic?
I think it depends on the kid. They do jam a lot into these visits. One of the big new sort of popular things is that they're getting to go out to Muschamp's house on Sunday. The kids that visited in December love that. So, that's a big part of it. You eat a lot of food. Saturday is obviously sort of the long day because you get in Friday night and you leave sort of Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. So Saturday is a very long day with a lot of stuff jammed in. They'll take in the basketball game on Saturday as well. They'll meet academic advisors. They'll tour the campus. They'll check out the Doty. The Ultimate Tailgaters, I believe, will be involved again with some of the food. So it's a long weekend, but a fun weekend, and they try to sort of cater. I think parents oftentimes are going to have different questions than the student athletes. So, they try to cater those different things, and they'll be together for part of the time, but then they'll split them up part of the time. One popular thing is that they have a player panel where prospects are allowed to ask current players questions without the coaches in the room, sort of like an honest forum for them to get answers. So, that's been pretty popular. And I think that the big thing about official visits is you sort of cater it individually to what that particular kid is looking for. And that's something South Carolina will try to do this weekend. Obviously, there'll sort of be a general plan for everyone. But, this kid may care way more about your business program, where this other kid may care about the defensive backs you put in the league. So you sort of try to mold the visit to fit what they are interested in, I think.
11 visitors coming in for Gamecock football this weekend for official on-campus visits. Recruiting update today with Wes Mitchell. Wes, good stuff. We look forward to reading more from you and hearing more from you on Gamecock Central Radio next week. Thanks very much.
Oh, yeah, man. We'll have nonstop updates on Gamecock Central. Of course, if we pick up anything along the weekend, we'll pass it along. And then on Sunday and Monday, we'll be having updates on how all the visits went.
Right. You can check back with us on Gamecock Central for plenty more recruiting information. A busy couple of 3 weeks coming up here for Gamecock football, and the coaches and the support staff certainly earn their off-season paychecks with weekends like the one we've got coming up. For Wes Mitchell, I'm Emerson Phillips, and this is Gamecock Central Radio. Thanks for joining.